So that last video was interrupted because the phone rang, which ended the video recording, and I know I should probably know the way to make it so that that doesn't happen on my cell phone, but I am so technologically boomer-esque. Even though I am not a boomer, I want to add that, make that very, very, very clear. I am not a boomer, but I am boomer-esque in my, of the stereotypical boomer who doesn't know anything about modern technology. So when the phone rang, that last video ended, and my thoughts weren't completed, so I'm just going to complete them now. It's kind of funny that people would, that I'm expecting people to tune in to hear me talk about this particular subject. Like, I don't know. I guess that, there's such a thing as morbid interest or prurient interest. Maybe there actually are some people who are sincerely interested. I don't know. I'm not saying there aren't, but it's just kind of funny. Here's part 2 of me at day 22 of NoFap. It's like, but anyway, my I want to make it clear, like I was saying before, my propensity to look down on myself for having taken part in that kind of activity, in my former self having taken part in that kind of activity. That doesn't mean that I'm looking down on anybody else. Okay, this is just my own personal journey, through NF. Let's just initialize it, okay, to be really classy, really civilized and non-explicit. So my personal journey through NF after 22 days. So I think it's interesting. Maybe I'll just put it this way. I think it's interesting that the lack of it hasn't had the effect of making it more appealing, but has had the opposite effect. Has had the effect of making it more loathsome to me, insofar as when I think about what it entails. I find myself much more judgmental towards myself, rightly or wrongly. Much more judgy of myself before I was on the wagon than I am now. And again, you would think, physiologically speaking, because of the reality of male anatomy, that there would be more urgency towards the thought of it. But that hasn't been the case. And without going into detail, I'll leave it to your imagination, but there has been no trace of any sign of anything whereby I would feel inclined or show myself bodily inclined towards this activity. So possibly this is the answer, or I don't know if there is the answer. If there is, a one definitive answer. I do know that, in the doctrine that I've embraced, that it is a sin. But I'm not talking about that here. And I don't want that to be the focus of what I'm saying. When I've gone into confession, I've always had to talk about it, which was always embarrassing, of course. And I think I talk about that in a prior, make reference to that in a prior video. Although people who aren't Catholic tend to have ideas or notions about the sacrament of confession that are somewhat prurient and don't really bear out, in the reality of the lived reality of things. But that's a different subject. So maybe I'm just considering this here, just thinking out loud, and I'm going to bring my thoughts to a close pretty soon here because I don't want to get tedious. But maybe the less you consciously desire, because you have to make a choice to be consciously desirous in order to take part in this activity of self-abuse. You have to make a choice. It's not the same thing as when desire hits you, and you find you can't do anything about it, and like if you're in high school or college, and it hits you, and you know what I mean, and it's there, present, makes itself known, and you feel embarrassed because your desire has manifested in a way that you're afraid is noticeable. It is noticeable if I guess depending on the kind of clothing you're wearing, but when you choose to be desirous, that kind of puts you in this mode where you shift towards the non-stoic perspective. You shift towards this mode wherein you fantasize about someone wanting you, and so forth, and that puts you in that different mode, and that maybe acts as brain bait, where your brain crosses you up because you're continuing to go into that mode consciously. It's different. I'm sure it's different if it happens unconsciously, although that hasn't happened to me. But again, I am 50, not 22, not 18, not 24, not probably many of the ages that the people watching this video are. So keep that in mind. So I'll end with this. Maybe what it is, maybe when your brain doesn't consciously go there, then you become more acclimated to going without. And again, it's not just about going without sex. It's about going without the desire to be validated. It's about going without the desire to be, to be thought of in a particular way, and thus validated. I think it all ultimately comes down to validation, but also, there's the physical side of it as well. But you go where your brain goes. You go where you choose to go. And if you refrain, and self-abuse is, yes, it's a physical activity, but it also involves the brain. The big head, what goes on inside the big head. And so you train your brain to go without, then you become more acclimated to being non-desirous of not just the physical thing, but also the things that go with the physical thing. The validation, the praise, the flattery that goes with it. So these are my thoughts on day 22 of NF. I'm sure you're all fascinated. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to y'all soon.